Hello, and welcome back to yet another off the shelf. This one's not on me. Go off,
No,
knick-knack.
this one's on me, and this one's it's an interesting one that I only happened to find like randomly about a year ago. This one's the novelization of Murder at the Kogetsukan. The same Murder at the Kogetsukan that was an FGO event at one point. They liked their mystery story so much in FGO, they turned it into a small novel, which it's kind of cool actually.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love it when people turn shit like that into like novels.
The version we read was a fan translated version,
Yes.
obviously. But one thing they did include that wasn't in the original were a couple diagrams that were in the original event. So if there's anything that looked a little off perspective from the rest of the art in the book, that's because it was taken from the original event and not in the original novelization published.
Okay, I was wondering. There had been a few funky things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess Saki, you're a big mystery person. What did you think of this one?
You know I love me a good Sherlock Holmes.
I know you do.
You know I love me a good Daddy Holmes in Fate. Also, this was a lovely break from oh, saw my cat. This was a nice break from everything we've been reading recently,
Look,
obviously.
hey. Complaining about it's my thing. You're not allowed to do that.
Yes, I am. I absolutely am. It reminded me a lot of just reading like a really good Nancy Drew.
Really, I haven't read any of the Nancy Drew originals, so
So I've read both Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, and like this is not like, and the reason why I compare it to Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys is because this is not like on the level of like a great mystery novel. Like this is
yeah.
no Agatha Christie or anything like that. But it's a well done mystery. The story's well thought out, kind of the plot, the culprit, all that sort of stuff. It makes sense. It's really interesting to read. There's occasional illustrations and diagrams, and you're essentially following like a main character set through this kind of plot.
hmm One element of the novel that they included, but I wanted to see if you actually did it, was, and I don't think you normally see this in mysteries. There's a part where you turn the page and it literally tells you, "Hey, you have everything you need to solve this.
The
Take some
challenge to
time
the
if you
reader.
feel like it to figure it out before reading onward."
The
Did
challenge to
you
the reader.
did you end up doing that?
I did not.
Okay, because
So,
part and oh, go ahead.
um,
Sorry.
so you're talking about the challenge to the reader on page 98 out of like
Yes.
121, right? But at the point where it came, so I'm reading this on phone, right?
Yeah.
And that means I'm essentially doom scrolling through these pages. And so if it wasn't an image, I really just scrolled right past it. So I think I passed this and I kept reading, and then I realized a couple pages later what I'd done, and I like scrolled back up real quick to see what I had missed if it was something important, and I
hmm
determined that it wasn't, and so I just kept going. I'm not really someone. I mean, like I'll make theories and stuff, but I'm not necessarily one to like put down a book and sit there trying to figure it out before the book tells me.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no, I
so
was just curious there because in the original event where this ran like basically every chapter was one day in real time where you would read a
mm.
chapter in one day, chapter the next day. And
Oh,
when we
see,
hit
I
that
couldn't
part
have
in the
done that.
original event, they basically said to the community, "Hey, go vote on who you think it is, and if the community gets it right, we will give you a reward in game."
See, I
So
get
that was a
that.
fun interactive element there in the original. I was just
See,
curious if you tried to, and you're not that kind of reader, so I'm
yeah,
not faulting
that
you. I was just curious.
that sounds really fun in the original game, and I probably would have participated if I was doing this in game. But also, I do not have the attention span to read things like chapter to chapter, like once on a 1 day basis, because like, and not this is not a brag. I read so fast. I mean, you've seen it. I read
Mm-hmm.
incredibly fast. And I still manage to pick up all the detail I need to pick up, but I don't slow myself down. And so sometimes if I'm limited to like a chapter a day, I'll just stop reading something until I can read like a backlog all at once. I do
Oh
it with
yeah.
webtoons, I do it with webcomics. We've discussed this before. It's kind of a fatal flaw of my reading. I'm just not able to like week excuse me. I'm not able to week it or day to day it.
No,
So
that's
like for
fair.
me, I just kept going. Because also I was at 98 pages and then the next page was like a chapter marker, and so I only had like 20 pages left, including like the end bits, like the last page and shit like that, and the diagrams and the images. And so honestly, I just kept going because I mean, I only had like 18 or 19 pages left at that point.
No, that's absolutely fair. This is probably the medium you would enjoy this in more in the original
Yeah.
day-to-day release of the game. Day-to-day things actually bother me in the game as well. I'm like, I am in the mood to play this now. I'm reading this now. Why are you stopping me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah.
I did like that, and I will say I can tell that this was from the game, but I did like that the things like the challenge to the reader and the final page were very obviously addresses from Sherlock to us,
Mhm.
like us the reader, like fully breaking the third wall. Like this man is telling us a story or investigating with us and trying to guide us to the correct conclusions. But if we don't get it, whatever. He's the only one perfect enough to get it.
Yeah, because while they call the main character in the event the Sherlock or the detective, and by the end of the story ends up being Sherlock Holmes. Actually, you are as the reader and the main character in the event are supposed to be the Watson that
Mm-hmm.
he explains it to. That was the other thing is the big giant twist there that the detective actually was Sherlock Holmes the entire time, and B that the detective was not already dead.
Which I'm gonna be honest, I feel like the cover image kind of spoils the fact that it's gonna be Sherlock, because the
Mhm.
cover image is just Sherlock with his pipe. Like I knew this was gonna be Sherlock immediately. Like I had no doubts, like none at all.
You were waiting for Sherlock to take center stage.
Basically, yeah, yeah. Like I had zero doubts. I knew exactly who it was gonna be. I knew I was in the position of Watson. Perfectly fine with that. Um, because a lot of the time, while Watson himself is like quite useful to the story, he often serves as a foil to cause Sherlock to explain things. So us
Yeah.
serving as the same thing made sense. Like it worked.
One thing that actually differs from the original event is and this is something like I assume most of our audience hasn't actually read this because they probably read the original event. This actually does change one thing from the original event because in the original event as the main character you can be male or female. They don't really draw attention to that in the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
This story went out of its way to make the gender of the main character actually an important plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so what did you think of that part as well? I was curious how you felt that because I was a little
I didn't
confused reading it the first time.
I didn't mind it, but at the same time, I suppose I just didn't care. It didn't really matter. Like it was a little funky in the way that things were addressed and it was kind of tiptoed around without being said, but
Mm-hmm.
it largely it doesn't matter.
What was like the final nail that they used to catch the culprit there?
Well, yeah, but you could have written it a different way. Like it didn't have
Yeah,
to be that specific thing. So like, go off, like good for them, but I would have accepted like a number of other things as well just as easily. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I think in the original event, instead of having her misidentify the gender of the main character at that time, the culprit instead identified that there was a note at all, I believe, and that was the big slip up.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people didn't know that or something along those lines. It's been a hot minute since I read the original event. I probably should have. Maybe I could have gone back and reread it, but it didn't feel that relevant. But I was just curious how you felt that without that one, because when I got there, I was like, "Wait, how is this actually relevant to them catching the villain?" And I really had to go back and like retrace. I'm like, "Oh, that felt a little bit funkily included." I didn't
Yeah.
mind it, but it was a little bit not. I don't want to say sloppy. Just they maybe could have drawn a little bit more attention to it, and that maybe that's a translation thing. Maybe it's not though. I don't know.
But at the same time, like I said, I compared this to Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, and
Mhm.
sometimes the same thing happens in Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. Like they're trying so hard to like create a certain thing as the narrative that maybe like sometimes you get to the end and you're like, huh, okay, it's a stretch, but okay. Oh Jesus, I really need to turn off my ringer.
That was my ringer went off like right before yours did, and it wasn't from the same chat.
Ah, yeah, no, it was not.
So
Um,
yeah, I just turned mine off as well.
yeah. Anyways, but yeah, it reminded me sometimes of like there's some Nancy Drew endings where like you read them and you're like, okay, like I see where you got it. It's not the clearest explanation, but given that I have no other explanation for it at the moment, okay, like works for me. If you can explain it away, works for me.
With so real quickly back to Sherlock Holmes. I absolutely love that the bitch, the absolute bastard, like realized that it was taking place in real time. And instead of like trying to play supportable, he's like, no, I'm gonna go there. This is my moment.
I love that. That feels very Sherlock Holmes. Peak. Absolute peak. That man was an egotistical, narcissistic, drug addicted, alcoholic, misogynistic. But
Like he
we love
saves
him.
the day, but also, I mean,
But we love him for it. I will say I did read the little biography of the author at the end, which was
mhm.
pretty interesting. Um,
It looked like he wrote some other mystery stuff too.
yeah. So it said he was part of the Kyoto University Mystery Club, and he had a debut novel in 2009, Marutamachi Revoir. And then that became a series, and then he wrote The Adventures of King Leo. And he wrote a novel based on the Ace Attorney series, Turnabout Time Traveler.
So that one's again, that's another novelization
Yeah,
based off of a
yeah, it
part, like
says
a
so.
section of the game.
Yeah, it says so.
Um, yeah, well, I remember that one.
Yeah. It also says that the artist, the illustrator who did the images here, works as a colorist on Black Lagoon and was the key visual artist for the 2010 film Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works by Studio Dean,
Ooh,
and is the character design and illustration for Sherlock Holmes, Tiamat, the Demon Pillars, and other characters in Fate Grand Order.
that makes sense. I assume that the artist, typically the artists always like loop back onto Fate Grand Order in some way in these.
Yeah. I was gonna say Sherlock looked too much like Sherlock to not be a similar illustrator. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there were like some definite differences in some of the art for the other characters where I was like, okay, I see what you did there. I see. I do kind of like having the art. It's nice. you know, childish of
Yeah,
me perhaps, but
I was
it's
kind of
nice.
happy to find out that because I didn't realize this until right before I gave you the book that most the servants they reference in the book you've already seen. Like there are a
Oh
few,
yeah.
but they weren't all like the big relevant ones outside of one of them you'd seen already, and I think you'd even seen that one because of a porn figure site,
Which one?
Ryko.
Oh yeah, barely, but yeah, I've technically like seen her figure in like this size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I tried not to stare too long at the characters I didn't know. Skipped past them as much as I could. I did appreciate like the family and company diagrams.
Yeah, so those are elements I believe were not in the original novelization. Those were taken from the game.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because they happen what, like two or three times? Once
Yeah.
close to the beginning, once close to the end, and I think one time in the middle.
It helps you keep track of all of the characters that are there because there's a lot of characters for a pretty short book.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
I do think that one element of this story where the characters are servants and they're misinterpreting or the main characters misinterpreting the relationships of these characters based off what they know about the servants. I feel like that element was probably, it felt like it was better in the game because you actually had the servants constantly there. Here, their names on a page. Like if you hadn't seen a good chunk of these, you probably it wouldn't mean anything at all to you.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely could see where like that could have been enhanced by the game.
Yeah, I'm
But
glad they did.
I feel like
Oh,
there's just some things that you have to be okay either sacrificing or building upon when moving something from a game to a book or a book to a game.
oh yeah, I'm genuinely glad they did this. I get because these events do not rerun anymore. They aren't available in game. If you miss them, you miss them, and you can't reread them unless you've already read them.
Mm-hmm.
So I am glad that they sort of preserve some of these in non-game form. There's a couple other things that have been done in like manga format, but this is the only one they've done in book, to my knowledge, and I'm glad they did that. It's
Yeah.
one more story to add to things people can read when the world eventually loses all of its online infrastructure.
Yeah. I love it though.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10. Good mystery novel. Oh, God, I just shook my entire fucking computer. I'd be into reading like more of these if they were available. Do you know, I'm sure that they're not available for everything, but this is by far for me a more tolerable way to read like things happening in game. Like
I
I do
figured.
just prefer to binge it as a book.
I wish there were more things like this. There's one or two other events they probably could have done like this, but this is definitely the strongest of those. They haven't done anything quite like this since. They've done like little one-off manga adaptations of events,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing like this one where it's like, oh wow, this is completely unavailable to be seen right now.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I always feel like I dread fate books a little bit, and then they end up being a lot better than I thought.
Why though? Do you
I
think I'm going to
don't
give you some of the
know.
worst ones?
I don't know. I think I just still have like PTSD from 2006. You know what I
I
mean? Like it sticks with you.
have I given you even one Fate book that was as bad as watching that old anime?
No, no. Although Tsukihime could have been better. Could have been better. Wasn't the worst. Could have been better. But even you admit that Tsukihime.
Well, if we're talking the anime, yeah, the anime was pretty bad. The manga, I just gave it to you so you could see the differences in pacing. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't
because it
expecting
is
you to get
very
invested because you've
different.
already seen that same story to the end.
Yeah.
I was just expecting, hey, take a look, and you did acknowledge some of the differences in pacing and how the manga definitely improved on that anime.
Yeah, speaking of, did the pacing change for this between game and book, or is it
No, this
pretty
is pretty
one to
much
one?
one for one to the original game.
Huh,
They added a
interesting.
little bit more actually,
Hmm.
like in terms of because obviously in the original game you're very limited with your dialogue options. In this, the main character talks just a little bit more.
Okay, that makes sense. If you don't have to make it so the players can pick a bunch of dialogue options, you can say more.
Yeah, do a little bit more in characterization,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing that they didn't do. This takes less creative liberties than the previous FGO manga I had you read,
Mm-hmm.
which there's still no new volumes out for that.
What are you having us read next?
That's right. It's my pick again next.
Yeah, because I had so many in a row, and I still
Look,
have a few more to go.
I gotta take the reins occasionally. Um, we're gonna be reading Garden of Avalon. Like I knew you would like this one. I'm not sure how your response is gonna be to Garden of Avalon though. It's
Mm-hmm.
very different.
Is it another game adaptation
No,
or outright
so
novel?
I'll probably go into some of this later, but this was a light novel that was released with the Unlimited Blade Works Blu-ray originally. I believe that's the context of it, and it's just some backstory on Artoria and the Knights of the Round Table, slightly fleshing them out more. It's
Okay.
different. I thought it would tie in well to having you read that after we did the Round Table. I don't actually know how much you'll like it or won't like it. But I don't think it's very offensive. It's pretty short. It's 200 pages on ebook.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's not very long at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
It'll
then
be
again,
inoffensive at the very least, but
yeah, then again, I have a very different I have a very different long to short ratio than most people I know.
Oh, I know for a fact that's short for you, but even for me, that's like 2 or 3 hours of reading right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm excited to read it, mostly because we've recently done the roundtable. And I'm always down for a little bit of Artoria, considering that even after the roundtable came out, I did not give myself downtime and went straight into Merlin fan fiction.
Well, unlike me, you didn't take a break from King Arthur then for months.
Nope, not at all.
All
Not even a little.
right, well, and I guess we'll see everyone next time at the round table or the round table. God no, go watch our old round table video, the Garden of Avalon.
Yep.